1 month ago, I committed to the hardest challenge of my life, 30 races in 30 days. Can you believe it? 7th, good sprint finish to the line. 5th place, I'll take that. Wow, that one felt brutal, the hills. What an absolute disaster at the start. There were some points in this challenge where I'm actually wondering if this challenge was too big for me. Maybe I wasn't ready. Now the goal of this video was to push my limits, increase my power output, strength and overall fitness, whilst making sure my body doesn't fall apart. I kept my diet the same, just increased the food intake to replenish the thousands of calories I was going to burn. The races I entered were either short sprint races or long endurance races. So regardless of your sport or your goals, if you are into fitness, there is plenty in this video for you. I set my bike up on the turbo trainer, we were about to become intimate friends, and a large dose of enthusiasm, deep inhale, and I was all set, I think. So race 1 was basically one big sprint. The tension was building on the start line of this 2.2 mile sprint race, and honestly, I had no idea what to expect. Out the blocks, people put down some power, and I was caught napping, seriously napping. On the first day of the first race, I was left behind. This was more through lack of experience than lack of ability. That's what I told myself anyway. We stayed in a bunch right up until the end when we had the sprint finish. Now I finished 3rd out of 18 people and averaged 339 watts. Not a bad start on the very first day, the very first race. Now race 2, this was a 22 mile race, and again I was dropped out of the blocks. Learn your lesson, Jordan. Go fast at the start. Anyway, we kept it steady for the first 5 miles on this looping course. I pushed hard, worried about my legs, and pondered about the 22 races that were coming up. But what mattered was the present, and in this race I crossed the line in 25th position out of 63 riders, averaging 262 watts for 56 minutes. Not a bad result at all. How hard can this be? Don't be naive, Jordan. Race 3 was similar to race 1 and 2, although I learnt from my mistakes to push harder at the start to stay with the group initially. I was in 2nd place and gaining on the leader as we reached the line, but 2nd place it was. Another good result. Firstly, can you view a course beforehand? Yes, you can. You can go into the Zwift Insider website and look at routes to see the elevation profile and other course details. So no more guessing where the hills are, hopefully. There are A, B, C and D categories in Zwift. Are the races mixed categories? In some races, we're all mixed. Other races, we're in specific categories. We also have power-ups available to make the suffering a little more bearable momentarily. These are displayed at the top of the screen. Learn what they are and use them. They are powerful. So for the first 3 races I was in category C. However, Zwift bumped me up to category B. This is based on the amount of power I was producing. So now I'm suddenly racing as a low category B rider as we enter race 4. I certainly didn't want to get dropped, so I pushed hard out the blocks. Now this race felt considerably harder and I was pushing to stay with the group. My legs were seriously burning throughout the race, but as we approached the final bend, I went for a sprint around 500 to 600 watts to the line. There were a few of us bunched up. Despite that, I managed to secure 8th out of 46 riders in my first category B race, averaging 300 watts for 20 minutes. I was buzzing, but I was also From that race, Zwift detected an FTP increase from 260 watts to 283 watts. This was the first big win of this 30-day challenge. I was also feeling physically stronger and mentally solid. Race 5 was 12 miles, and in this race I got dropped for the first time. The main group disappeared into the distance on the first hill. My legs just couldn't and wouldn't take me. Some humble pie was served for Jordan right there. I basically held on for the rest of the race and finished 19th out of 48, averaging 290 watts for 26 minutes. Still above average finish, but I was starting to feel the accumulative days of riding. Despite that, Zwift again detected an FTP increase from 283 to 286. 2 FTP increases in 2 days. What is going on? Race 6 was a short race uphill and I finished 7th out of 15. Just above average, literally. This was the first race that I felt like it was a real grind. I had to dig deep and I finished 7th out of 15. Race 7 was a high power race from the start. As it was only 9.7 miles, I should be able to keep up this high power. Now up the hill, people were pushing hard. I was doing everything I can to keep with the group. Despite the grueling effort, I finished 20th out of 74, averaging 322 watts for 20 minutes. Now I was really struggling after this race and I had to go outside for some air. I honestly thought that I was going to be sick. I was trying to get air in. I was struggling, peeps. I was really struggling. Good news though, again, Zwift boosted my FTP. We're in the 300s, baby. Get in there. We were creeping up, my friends. My legs were getting used to the pain. My brain was starting to, but still didn't like it. Now races 8 through to 15 followed a similar format. Now on all of the hills, people pushed the hardest and tried to drop you. The reason they do this is because there is drafting in the game. Racing day after day was starting to take its toll on my legs. I really felt like I needed a rest day. Each race I wasn't at 100%, so I started to struggle and I was getting a little bit frustrated. This especially shows at the end of the races where we need to sprint. I simply couldn't maintain the power required, so I kept losing places close to the line. It's annoying me that I'm just going and going and going my max, and then people just flying by. So up to this point, there had been no technical issues, then this happened. Can you believe it? My first tech issue. Yes, my computer crashed. My first DNF did not finish. I did, however, manage to complete 10 miles of that race before the crash happened. Now here are the results for the races so far. You've got the miles that I've covered, you've got the race time that I've covered, we have the watts for each race, elevation and calories burnt for each race as well. So far though, I was pleased with the progress and how my body was performing. Welcome to Jordan Go Stretching. Pause. My body hurt and I needed to increase the stretching to match the amount of racing I was doing. It's time to up my game and really start treating my body like a temple. After all, this is for injury prevention and to help me keep pushing. Anything that gives me marginal gains is more than welcome. Back to the racing, and race 16 was a short 2.7 mile sprint race, all guns blazing basically. As with previous races, I was struggling with the sprint at the end. I tend to empty my tank in the race, so I don't have enough beans for the final push. Having said that, I finished 5th out of 17, averaging 339 watts for 6 minutes. Not a bad little burst. Race 17 was my first London race, off down the mall to see Queen Lizzie for the first time. Now for this 10.8 mile race, the power and speed was actually quite low. I thought there was going to be a massive push at some point, however it never came. If I had started my sprint earlier, I think I could have won this race because I could have held my sprint for much longer. Now in the end I crossed the line in 5th out of 20. Not a bad result, I'll take that. 18 was also a great race and the first race in Neokyo, which is basically Zwift's version of Tokyo. It's just like the real thing basically. Kinda. It was full of lights on the back streets and generally a crisscrossing winding course. Now in this race, each category was chasing down the category below them. So we had the A's behind us chasing us down like cheaters on the run. There was a hill in this route that was pretty brutal, and in the end, once the A's caught us, I got dropped up the hill. I did, however, group up with some other riders and managed to finish 24th out of 60, averaging 296 watts for 46 minutes. Wow, that one felt brutal. The hills are a killer, man. The people were so quick up them. What a lovely trip around Tokyo. I'm in Neokyo. Races 19, 20, 21 and 22 all followed a similar format. I was realising I needed to understand my sprint better so I could time it correctly at the end of each race, taking into account the race length, the race effort, elevation, etc. This is one of those days where you think, what the f have I got to do to get a win? Now, the more I raced, the more I started to understand what my damn body was doing. It was hurting, that's what it was doing, but I could gauge from that how to sprint at the end of the race. I wasn't feeling the best last night, I was feeling tired. The last day or two I felt tired, I've struggled to get on the bike. Despite that, I was still getting decent results. I wasn't too hard on myself. After all, if I wasn't racing daily, then maybe some of these finishes would have been a little bit better and I would have finished a little bit stronger. There is beauty in the madness. Our strength and growth come only through continuous effort and struggle. Because at some point in this challenge, the daily race became the highlight of my day. The moment that gave me energy and a feeling of elation. The moment I'd look forward to, a buzz and energy. Myself, like others, once upon a time thought, why would anyone take on a physical challenge like this? What is there to gain? But after weeks of pushing myself to the limit, every day, it's no longer the exhausting, time-consuming and monotonous task that I had originally visualized it to be. It's like each race there is a stone being thrown at me, and on the first day it was a big old rock, and on the final day it's going to be more like a diamond. All I had to do was keep catching. Race 23. I wasn't feeling good, my body was tired, legs were struggling, eyes were heavy. I dragged myself onto the bike and got ready to race. 5.9 miles of racing on a pretty flat course. I really planned this one and I sat in the group and drafted to save energy. Now, I waited until 0.2 miles to go and launched a big sprint. I pushed past quite a few riders and managed to finish 4th out of 14, averaging 313 watts. Now, this was a great result, but little did I know that this was the last time that I would ride in this 30-day challenge. The next day I felt ill and I couldn't ride, unfortunately. In fact, I didn't ride for nearly 2 weeks and I was actually devastated that I couldn't finish the challenge. A little bit frustrating, but what can you do? Recovery is key. However, I didn't want to waste the hours of effort and footage, so I produced this video anyway to show you what real life looks like. The 23 races I completed were amazing, and here are the final totals. So if there were 100 racers in every race, I would have had an average finish of 35th. So we are above average. I averaged 306 watts, which is 3.9 watts per kilogram in 10 hours of racing, and burnt 9,688 calories along the way. I rode 9,397 feet uphill, or 9 times the Shard height in London. Now, the main takeaway, if you have any sort of hurdle to overcome, challenge to take on, you really can do it. There will be people doubting you. There will be times that you potentially doubt yourself or doubt creeps into your mind. But if you dedicate 100% of yourself, you can make it happen. So that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.